Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Freeformers Unplugged. I say good afternoon. It's afternoon when we're recording this. Who knows what time of day it is where you are or when you are listening to this, because you can catch up on various places: Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, all the places that Toby always says and I always forget. Welcome along. Is it hot where you are? It's very hot here. How are you, Toby, other than hot?
Oh, that's unfair. You didn't prepare me for that because I was just. How am I? I'm really good actually. I've had a really good week. I think I've been trialing this new thing that you know about, that I have been trying to do one day a week where I have no calls, and I know people have done this before, so it's not necessarily new or inventive. Um, but the annoying thing was on Wednesday, I got through lots of work. I planned to do other work after I'd done my other work, if that makes sense, but all the work took, yeah, like I didn't realize how many odds and ends I had to tie up, and it took me the whole day to tie up those odds and ends, is what I'm kind of trying to say. So I'm really good because I got all that done, but the other stuff, the running a business stuff, I didn't get round to, which just leaves me slightly frustrated. But I go into the weekend knowing there's nothing left to do, I think.
It's a bit of a weight off your shoulders, isn't it?
Yeah, I can relax in this temperature if you
Oh,
can.
look, it's going down. It's going down. It's going to rain on
No,
Sunday
it
here
no, no, it is where you are because
because we've had it hot since Tuesday.
yeah, I have been all week kind of bragging that yeah, I'm about 7 degrees cooler now. Now, how the tables have turned.
The tide
Um, no, I was just trying to quote. I was trying to quote Michael
the
Scott from The
tides have
Office
turned.
because he used how the turns. I don't know how the turns, how the tables. I can't remember what the quote is, but how the turns have tabled or something like that. He constantly misquotes
Spoonerisms, they're called,
phrases.
aren't they?
Spoonerisms is that what it is? Spoonerisms.
Spoonerisms, I think so. Anyway, let's leave the spoonerisms at the door for today's topic. One of Toby's, something that I know that you care a lot about. So expect some passion from Toby, excitement, hand waving. If it was me, it'd be sound peaking, but you have a better sound setup. HR and L&D cannot design the future of work with yesterday's digital instincts. So, before we dive into our new format, where I asked Toby 5 questions about this topic that he's never heard before, tell us why you chose this topic, please.
I have forever and a day made the joke at HR conferences that most of the people I'm speaking to at any moment in time will use Facebook as their kind of primary social media platform. Now, if you're anyone under the age of, I would suggest 40, Facebook probably isn't. You kind of moved away from it a couple of years ago because it was like, nah, not for me. I'm out. Too many ads, too much meta AI now, too much content that you don't really want. Anyway, and so having worked with HR and L&D teams, their technological instinct is obviously always based off their own personal experiences. Now, workplace technology for the whole of my career has been awful. It's been way behind the consumer grade technology that's available outside the world of work. And I kept trying to reflect why. And I just see time and again when HR and L&D are making technology based decisions, they make pretty awful ones. And I don't know whether that's because the marketplace is full of awful technology, or actually the ability to interrogate that technology is based on your kind of known universe. And if it's based on your current known universe, then how are you ever going to make forward thinking choices? So that, yeah, you're right, I'm very passionate about it. I kind of encapsulates maybe what 15 years of frustration that started when I got my first kind of head office corporate job 15 years ago, and was presented with Lotus Notes as
Oh,
like the
yeah.
productivity suite.
Oh,
And
I'd
look,
forgotten Lotus.
yeah, hadn't we all? Because it was shit. Um, but but like even at that stage, 15 years ago, right? I don't think there were many organisations kind of peddling Lotus Notes as their platform of choice. Yet I got to work and was instantly in this world of crap tech.
Mm.
And it's never necessarily got any better. It's not got worse. Don't get me wrong. It's not got worse. We've not gone backwards in any regard. I've never had to then do Lotus Notes since. But my goodness, it's a slow old progress in the world of HR and L&D where tech is concerned for my money.
Okay. Well, you'll have lots of chance to put your money where your mouth is, I guess, substantiate some evidence to your claims, etc., as we go through these questions. So I want to start off question one, much bigger and broader, actually. So we have a real productivity problem in this country. UK, persistent 15 to 20% productivity gap when you compare to other countries in the G7 like the US, Germany, France. So the Productivity Institute claims there's three drivers for this, right? Chronic underinvestment, skills shortages, and poor infrastructure. And while you can talk about that, on the macro level with like looking at the country, I want to talk on an organizational level. So chronic underinvestment, skills shortages, and poor infrastructure. How does workplace technology relate to that and relate to productivity?
Big question for question number one, because I think you've actually asked me three questions in one there. So just remind me of the 3 points again.
Chronic underinvestment, skills shortages, poor infrastructure.
Okay, so poor infrastructure, I think, is probably the easiest one to tackle in that realistically, the environment and ecosystem in which people are expected to operate in generally aren't that well optimized, is my belief. Now, I think one of the big drivers of that, let's pedal out the old COVID-19 excuse, is that, well, it's nothing to do with COVID-19 because COVID-19 should have fixed this, but it didn't. Remote and hybrid work, like there are so many inefficiencies in how organizations are set up to manage and work with remote, disparate, fractured, kind of even global workforces. But even on a small scale where you've got field teams, no one's figured it out. No one's figured it out yet. And I think it, in part, comes down to the stuff. Some of the stuff I'll talk about in this episode is like the technological ecosystem these organizations work in prohibits you from doing that effectively because it isn't mirroring kind of social technologies outside the world of work. So I believe that's a relatively easy one. Skills shortage. How long you got? There's a skills shortage because we need new emerging skills, really. So the skills, broadly speaking, I think the way the world is moving, of course, you probably the way you were doing your job 10 years ago isn't probably how you're doing it today. And how you're going to do it in the next 2 years probably isn't the same as today either. So the skill shortage is primarily one of, yes, there's completely new jobs, things that didn't exist before, and you need those. But I think that skill shortage is primarily based on people being able to adapt and change what and how they do, which
Mm.
notoriously in the world of work has been extremely hard to get any one individual or group of people to do that. And then you're going to remind me of what the first one was again.
Chronic underinvestment, which I think is very pertinent, particularly when we're talking about HR and learning and development.
Yeah. So the other two are almost symptomatic of chronic under. Well, I wouldn't even say underinvestment. Actually, I
Okay.
would say there's a huge legacy of stupid investment, investment that hasn't resulted in anything, and therefore the decision makers that attribute budget to skills development and create the infrastructure of employees are kind of going, well, I'm not going to invest any money in that because time and time again I've seen this huge amount of investment not pay off. And I think that boils down to several things that we've already talked about. Technology, the investments in technology. If I've gone to HR and learned technologies and seen, would I procure most of the tech in that room? No, absolutely not. Would I procure some of that tech because it's the best of what's available? Well, yes, I probably have to because it's like, well, I kind of have to. But let's talk in practical terms, right? So we were talking with an organisation that were looking to develop an e-learning module that had AI built into it, and they were quoted somewhere in the region of £30,000 for that. Realistically, based on the work we've done in the past 6 months, we know you could actually spin up something similar with the tools and technology this organisation already has for a tenth of that cost. And
So
so
for any US listeners or anybody who doesn't know what a pound is, I have just Googled it. 30,000 GBP is just under 40,000 USD. So a tenth of that, we're looking at $4,000 or £3,000 to build something instead of 10 times as much.
I mean, so much so that we've talked about clients with that, and they go, "Wow, surely you should be charging more." And I'm like, "It really doesn't take us that long." I'm like, "Maybe we should charge more. I don't know." But like, realistically, it just doesn't take that long, and it's not that big an effort. if you're building it within inside like your tech ecosystem, all the AI stuff that an L&D or HR team may do generally might be covered by your generalist AI tool that you have in there, your Geminis, your Claudes, your Chat GPTs, maybe your Copilots, but let's not stretch the imagination too far now, shall we? So the chronic underinvestment, technology is one, and then the other is training. Like
Hmm.
huge amounts of money, not only to procure someone to go in and design and deliver that training, whether it's internal or a provider, but then also the operational cost to take people away from their job to do that. And I think the thing we always talk about, right, is if you're going to remove people away from their day to day and do some training, then they actually have to be doing the job whilst on the training. Like, what is the tangible output that they can come away that training and go, I made progress against this thing that I am trying to achieve? Because if they're not doing that, then the training is probably being delivered at completely the wrong time because it's not applicable. And so I think a huge overinvestment of training, crap training that doesn't move the needle, and therefore no one's willing to invest in that either. It's just like we'll do we'll do a 1 hour lunch and learn, and then it's done, kind of thing. And so for me, I think that's probably the answer to your one question that was secretly masquerading as three questions.
That was one question. I also asked you up front if I could ask you a question about productivity and technology, and you said sure.
Well, the
So
other thing, yeah, no, I was gonna go into a deep dive about productivity, but I'm not going to do that because I'm going to
okay,
restrain myself.
okay, well done. Toby restraining himself, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else. You won't see that very often. Question two then. So, how does the leadership's understanding of digital behavior shape employee experience?
Well, I think how does leadership's behavior mirror anything? Right,
Okay.
it was mirrored, like, so hiring decisions, you hire in your own image. Culture, you know, I go back to my first corporate job. My boss would notoriously stay in the office till 7, 8 p.m. So what did all the team do? We stayed till 7 to 8 p.m. We mirrored that behavior. So they kind of set the leadership of an organization, set the agenda for any behavior, annoyingly. um and the world we find ourselves in now is that leadership tend to be of generally an older generation because of the hierarchical nature of an organization. They'll have been in the
Mhm.
world of work longer, they're slightly older or much older in some organizations, and therefore their perception of how the world of work works is built on all of their previous experience. And also they're getting to an age now where they're not necessarily so curious and developing themselves outside the world of work where tech's concerned. My dad is a really good example. My dad, um, this is going to be a bit harsh, I think, but he loved tech and gadgets. Like when I was growing up, he was like, if I need to know anything about technology, I'd talk to my dad. I certainly wouldn't do that now.
Mm.
Um, he's narrowed his expertise in drone photography and filmography, so he knows a lot about that niche, but that's his business, right? But would I say he knows loads about like the emerging technology and stuff like that? Absolutely not. And so I do wonder, as you grow older, does that curiosity just wane? I don't know. Will I still be playing on my PlayStation 5? No, I won't be. I'll be playing the PlayStation 10 when I'm 60. But I would like to think I'm still interacting with technology in the same way I did 10, 15 years ago. And now is that as a millennial? Don't know. And so when it
Shout
comes to
out to Michael Kang while we're at here. Michael
let's
Kang, it's greatly appreciated all that you've done for Toby and for Freeformers, and we're not just slamming you on this
of course,
podcast.
I didn't slam it. I just like, he look. Case in point. The second time I've used that phrase, apologies. But he used to get a tech magazine, T3 Tech magazine. I don't think he gets it anymore. So he's not. He's actively not going in and doing as much because I would obviously read that magazine as well. So he's got other stuff going on. He's got other stuff going on, and then maybe again with age and time, maybe that's what happens. Other stuff you deprioritize that. But I think it's like now an imperative to be honest. It's not just a hobby now; it's an imperative that you keep up with this stuff. Um, and so yeah, so in that instance, the maturity of a leadership team with its behaviors being reflected back into the entire organization, I think it's exactly the same thing with tech decisions, but also tech adoption as well.
Okay, nice. And so related to that, like what kind of outdated assumptions are still influencing decisions about workplace technology, like learning and communication, broadening up a bit here? So we've got these outdated assumptions. How are they still influencing decisions?
Emails. Emails absolutely baffles me to no end. So I made a prediction in January 2020. By the end of this decade, internal email would be the thing of the past. I think I was naively optimistic in that world because I've got 3.5 years now for that to happen. Um, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There are so many organizations that are so entrenched in email culture. I can understand it from an external perspective, right? Because the way I always say it is like email is a digital letter. And so when you are doing email internally, it's like you're writing a letter to someone who lives in the same house as you. It makes no sense. Whereas writing a letter to someone outside the house, that does make sense. There are way more methods of communication and collaboration now beyond email, even if we just look at Teams and Slack, right? But a lot of us are using video, voice notes, and all this kind of thing. There are so many different ways of communicating, but organizations always seem to defer to email, just in the same way, as comms teams will defer to email, that L&D teams defer to e-learning, or a HR team defers to a HRIS, a policy update on HRIS, and everyone reads it, and everyone's going to start acting and behaving in a new way. So we kind of are relying on these antiquated things which just make no sense. I imagine if my daughter went into the world of work in, well, probably 12 years, I would hope that she looks at email and go, this is just the most stupid, archaic technology. Why are we still using it?
Like a fax. I've never seen a fax machine.
Ah, yeah, right. It is, for me, email is the new fax machine. Like, it doesn't, it just makes no sense to me. The formality of it as well is like, I saying "hey name" at the beginning of a thing is like, you don't do that outside the world of work. If I was going to send you a WhatsApp message, go, "Hi Emily," like it introduces this level of formality that just doesn't need to happen. I don't
I
think.
do that sometimes. Like, so I think if I don't really know somebody very well, then I'll say hi, whoever, make it more like an email. Hi, whoever, I've made the transfer to put money into the kitty for the teacher's presents at the end of the year. That kind of thing.
I think that, but that's more. I'd be atting someone rather than saying hello
Oh,
to
I'm not
them.
doing it in the group chat, Toby. I avoid the group chat like the plague.
Okay, but there were all of these kind of digital social mechanics that happened quite fluidly outside the world of work that don't seem to have permeated inside the world of work. And I put it at the leadership people making these decisions. Even in person training, right? Is you can kind of say, "Oh, in-person training isn't dead," and all this kind of stuff. I get it, but it's like you are just deferring to your known universe. You're deferring back to your known universe, right? And that's kind of what we said. We don't talk about politics, but the reason people voted for Brexit is because they wanted to go back to something.
Mm.
And it's like the thing we talk about in terms of narrative theory is like you can never go back to how anything ever was. That is impossible because the technological, economical, social landscape, all the different environmental has so fundamentally shifted that it is literally impossible. So do not try. I don't know how I got to that point.
Harking back to something you had before, where we like going back to the same old systems that we feel comfortable
Yeah,
with because
yeah.
they're norms and they're established and people know what they're doing with email. And but email's just one example. You must have others as well in terms of outdated assumptions that still influence decisions.
Um, I think it's my best one. That's the issue. I think it's that it kind of all goes back to content. I think my common theme is about content, right? So let's just think about particularly large organizations, content being delivered to an individual. A lot will happen over email, but we'll also deliver it through a learning management system. We also may have an internal comms platform. We may also have an HRIS that's delivering messages as well. And so what we tend to do is over engineer these siloed approaches to engaging with employees. And
Hmm.
what happens is at the surveys as well, right? Regardless if any of those one things is really good by itself, it doesn't matter It doesn't matter if you procure the best survey platform in the world, because it's sitting with an ecosystem among 5 to 10 to 20 other things that are trying to grab an employee's attention at one time. Now, outside the world of work, organizations, social media channels have figured this out. So you have to fight for the attention and do things in certain ways to grab that attention. But what we do inside an organization, we assume that just because we've made it, someone will go. We're not fighting for attention. But
Mm-hmm.
you are. You're fighting it. And the stupid thing is you're fighting attention against yourself. And so every single program I've been part of in a large corporate has done something, is battling against another department that's probably trying to achieve the same thing, but in a different way. Where it needs to be comms, it needs to be learning, it needs to be whatever. And it's just, it doesn't make any sense. And this is where, when we talk about measurement, the siloed approach to measurement doesn't work, and therefore the siloed approach to design doesn't work, because you just end up creating products and services that compete for your employees' attention, and that just does not make it. You're making your job so much harder as a result.
Definitely. Okay. So, what's the worst horror story you've ever seen, excluding emails, please, but in terms of work technology, digital behavior, and like an expectation to behave in a certain way?
Yammer is the one I always point back to. Yammer, no one I've ever met has gone, you know what, Yammer, and for those who don't know, for those who are younger than myself and Emily, is Yammer was like the Microsoft's version of Facebook for inside of work. Now, Facebook is an incredibly successful platform, regardless if you use it still or not, whether you like it or not. It's an incredibly successful platform. Content's being created by users. There's lots of conversation going on. Whether they're hemorrhaging users or not is by the by. But the platform works. So Microsoft spun up Yammer, and it technically did everything exactly the same. You could like, you could comment, you could create videos, you could create posts, you could do all the same things. But everyone I've ever talked to goes, I didn't like Yammer. You're like, how could you not like Yammer? Yammer was exactly the same as Facebook, and you were liking Facebook. So what was wrong? And it's the fact that we allow technology to be the excuse in that situation, when actually it was about your culture and human behavior, and probably, I go back to it, leadership. And also your comms team, because every comms team was like, we need to manage this. We need to manage the comms strategy that happens on our internal social media channels. What do you think? Well, to be debated. Do you think Facebook are sat there trying to define the content strategy that you get to? They absolutely are, but for very different reasons. And it's like, content and conversation in an organization is not there to be managed. If the fact that you try and manage it means it's probably just not going to happen. So I think that's one of my biggest frustrations. I see that playing out with lots of things. YouTube, when it first came out, every organization locked down YouTube on any work device, and you're like, why? What do you think is going to happen here? Like, we're all going to watch pandas sneezing and Charlie bit my finger and all this kind of stuff, all videos that are like 10 seconds long. Do you really think that's going to be the thing that inhibits productivity? And now it's become one of the greatest learning resources on the planet. And so it's always quite short-sighted about, we need to control and manage the technology. Yet when a technology is released out into the world, society demands it. And I was thinking about this the other day. The dissertation I wrote at university was, is technology's evolution determined by the technology available, or how society interacts with it? And I really couldn't come up with an answer. And I think the genuine answer, now coming back to it, is it's actually money. Money dictates it. Like, if you can make money out of it, then it isn't the technology being available or society demanding its use. It's where the money goes. Otherwise, social media channels and trends wouldn't move around so much. You'd have a lot more of a static ecosystem. So does that answer the question? Because I think I've now lost my way again in the dizziness of the heat.
In the dizziness of the heat, I'd say you've more or less answered the questions. I asked you for your worst horror stories. Yammer. Yammer's now Viva Engage, right? That's the same.
Is it? Don't know. I don't think so.
Oh, okay. It's been well and truly retired.
I think they're so different now that it like, and also, trying to, the issue I have with the point, because you're probably right, it probably has, like, we're going to move this thing into here, but that's like saying Facebook has turned into Discord. Like
Oh,
do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? I think, and I'm not likening that the two platforms being the same, but what I think Viva Engage is trying to do, but in a really stupid way, is imagine if you built a CMS on the back of Discord and said to all your users on Discord, go to the CMS to get content. And it's like, well, no, the content's happening in the conversation. I don't need a CMS for it because the content's here in the threads and the chats. Yet they're trying to bolt a CMS onto it. So it just wacky, babe. So it's not really a horror story, I guess. It's just like pure damn frustration at the world of work.
okay. So let's look forward now and be proactive. So, what do leaders need to do to recognize that's changing digital behavior? And it is changing, and it's especially, I mean, we've hardly touched on AI yet, but it is changing and changing how we act all the time. So, what do leaders need to do to recognize changing digital behavior and choose tools that will still be useful in a few years?
It's the same with leaders and everything. You kind of, the social structure of work means you have to lead by example, whether you like it or not. You kind of have to, because that's in some instances how the world of work works. My boss's boss, they do this, and if I want to be seen to be productive or get promoted, I have to assimilate and do what they do. Now, the AI one is really interesting because you and I have seen it multiple times now within organizations. AI adoption happens a lot quicker and faster at the lower levels of an organization rather than senior levels. So the thing that was inhibiting progress at a particular organization we were working with was the top level of people within that organization. So there's 9,000 people, and this was about 900 of like the most senior people in that organization, were in the majority refusing AI. There was like maybe 3 to 5 power users out of that 900 that were doing really cool things with AI from like an individual productivity perspective, then also as a team productivity perspective, and then they were creating new markets in doing like applied AI with their clients. So they started doing stuff really, really interestingly. The other 895 were kind of going, nah, it can't do what I can do. I'm too good. I'm too special. I'm too unique. I'm too great at what I do that it
Hmm.
can't possibly help what I do. Whereas the lower level parts of the organization go, ha, yeah, I'm going to do this. Why? Because like I can save time. I can do things quicker. I can do faster. They're less frustrating, and therefore it frees me up to do something else. I can either phone it in and sit in the garden, or I get to do, I'll put myself on another project. And depending on what kind of employee you are, there's a spectrum of that kind of engagement. So that's that's like the wrong way round for tech adoption to happen within an organization. It should be the other way around. The 900 of 9,000 should be doing it first. Like they should be leading by example, but they're not. And so you've almost got this place where it's like, well, you have no other option now other to enforce like a culture of reverse mentoring to make this happen. And you're like, well, all of a sudden your frontline workforce have just become the leaders in the organization because they're the ones driving it forward and doing new and interesting things where technology is concerned. And so you it's easier said than done because you said let's be proactive, but it's like it's kind of sink or swim at the moment. I think genuinely with this leadership, because if you just sit there and do nothing with this, it's moving so fast, it's developing so quickly that you will get left behind. The one I always use, and you'll be sick of hearing this, is that you know on a very basic level, OpenAI and ChatGPT really struggled to do word count 12 months ago. If I wanted it to meet a word count, it really struggled. Now it can do it really, really easily. And no one ever pushed out a big handbook said this is the updates to the ChatGPT model. This is what you can do and what you couldn't do. Called the jagged technical. It was the jagged technical frontier that I think Boston Consulting Group coined it. In that it just applies its skill set in a non-hierarchical way. AI applies its skill set in a non-hierarchical way. Yet we apply skill set within an organization in a hierarchical way. So, when we kind of go, oh, it's acting as like a postgraduate who's done an MBA, whatever. Like it's like, yes, you're trying to rationalize the behavior of AI against human skill set and development, and that's not how it works. It just goes wherever it can to do different things. And that might be 80% of what senior leaders can do and 100% of what frontline workers can do, or the other way around. No one knows because it's different for every organization. So in that world, you have to play with it and try new stuff. You have to. And that's difficult because we've all built careers on filling our time with stuff. So what you're asking to do is to slow down to speed up, really, because to do something first with AI probably going to take you a lot longer than you actually doing it, or it's certainly going to you're not going. It's going to take more time in the future. That will save you time. So it's was it two steps forward to take one step, 2 steps back to take one step forward, kind of thing, or whatever.
Hopefully 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah, but you take the steps back first. That's my point. Is that you kind of have
One
to take
step back, 2 steps forward would still mean
you
you're
have to take
moving forward.
with AI, you have to take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. No one wants to, especially at senior level, with people who've been in organizations for a while, don't want to take the step back because that's seen as bad. I'm not making progress. I'm seen to be wasting time and flittering away my time doing stuff that hasn't developed a tangible output.
And last sub question, that was question 5. So last sub question, question 5. That's AI. Do you think the same holds true for like social media or content creation?
Yeah. I was like, I never do one word answer, so I was trying my best to do a 1 word answer. Then you left a big silence after I said yeah. So now I'm trying to fill it. Yeah, I think it does.
In what way?
Showing up on video. This goes back to remote and hybrid teams. Showing up on video makes lots of people feel very, very uncomfortable. Yet, it's one of, not the most, but one of the great ways you can engage an audience at scale. YouTubers have told us that. You can influence, shape behavior and culture at scale. And the YouTube research from a couple of years ago demonstrated that actually content creators are more likely to manage or shape and influence culture than celebrities because they have relevance, they have context that a celebrity doesn't have in most people's worlds. So the issue you have is kind of twofold with the senior leadership team, is that they very rarely have the context and relevance of their frontline employees. But some of them do. And some of the best leaders I've seen at these kind of things are able to call back to their career when they were in that person's shoes and say, I kind of know what it's like. I'm not going to pretend that I know exactly what it's like for you now because the world has changed, but I at least can have a meaningful conversation with you about it. But the issue with that is like it's then done again from a position of hierarchy. You come to me and I will talk to you about that, rather than you trying to almost broadcast this kind of stuff. If you want to do it at scale, you have to broadcast that as a senior leader. I don't see many senior leaders broadcasting because they will do it through professional video production. Great. I mean, it's expensive, it's time consuming, all that kind of stuff. You can't
Easy
do it.
to change, easy to adapt. Not easy,
Yeah.
difficult to change,
Okay,
difficult to
like,
adapt.
yeah.
Sorry, not easy.
But then you might have a comms person go, oh, well, we'll do it for you.
Mm.
And it's like, one of the most important things, if we could take away from this, is that you have to lead by example, but also you have to be able to manage and develop your own communications. Because if you cut that's what every influential person in the world now is able to do. Kim Kardashian is fantastic at it. Kim Kardashian can spin a narrative out of nothing with her content. It's like so clever in that world about what to do. There was she like passed one of Lewis Hamilton's towels to Kimi Antonelli at Formula One race and all this kind I might be misremembering that, but she knew exactly what she was doing at that moment in time to create a message, a content, and narrative. And leaders traditionally would have done that by being in the office. People will see how I do, see how I operate. I'm influencing how people perceive me and follow me by how I swan around the office and interact with individuals and shake hands or whatever. That still applies, still important, but that also happens digitally through content as well. And I just remember my very first CEO I worked under, she was asked to create some video content. And I don't know who helped her do it, but they literally kind of like had her pinned up against a white wall and it looked like a kidnappers, like someone had
Being
kidnapped
held
her,
hostage.
and she looked like she'd been held hostage. And you're just like, I, regardless of what you're saying, you look petrified. You look like you've been kidnapped. How is that adjusting how I'm receiving this information? It's just receiving, because I can't tell you now what was in that video. I can tell you exactly what her eyes looked like and how she looked petrified and how the uh, and it's like there is no excuse now,
Mm.
technologically speaking, there's no excuse now not to be able to present yourself in a digital domain really well, other than the human behavior.
Maybe that's where AI avatars will come in, and then they won't have to do it anymore. I'm saying that to wind you up.
Yeah, and I'm trying not to go off on one. The big thing was the eye contact one, right? So, and this is genuinely a really tricky one. Is that I have you and me up here on my screen, and we're about that big on the screen. We're
Yeah, so
really
you're
small,
looking at it.
but it's forcing me to look at least as close to the camera as possible. You know, eye contact in photography, in videos, and everything like that creates more engagement. There are the stats out there to prove it. And so, but that's really difficult. And you know what? To his credit, we talk about my dad and tech. My dad was the one who said that. It's like, when I do content on my phone, he goes, "I can tell you're doing it on your phone." I was like, "How?" It's like, because you're just looking at your face. You're not looking at the camera. Train yourself to look at the camera. My dad taught me that, so he's probably not as tech redundant as I thought. But then I did give him a book one Christmas for how to get famous on Instagram. So maybe it was in that book, and he was just telling me in the present I gave him. Oh, the irony. And so it's just a new way of doing stuff. All of this stuff is always a new way of doing stuff, but like there are with AI and I think video and social content creation, from a leadership perspective, there is an imperative, because if you're not doing it, you're old school. And
then it becomes cringy.
oh, the honestly, I have a friend who works for a content agent, a film production agency, and they were doing the video content of the three, I think, senior leaders in that organization on the run up to their big annual conference. I'm trying to say this without saying who it is. And essentially, they went out and spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds, filming them like driving around in a car as if they were picking each other up to get to the conference. And they're
Okay.
like, the concept from a creative agency, which my friend works at, the concept works. Did it work with those three leaders? Absolutely not. It was one of the, what to in their credit, one of those leaders was really good at it. The other two was just like, this is horrific. Like, you have no presence.
Being held
Yeah,
hostage.
yeah. And it's just like, whether you like it or not, it's a skill you need as a leader now. It's a skill you need. You have to be able to do that. Because if you can do it on stage, if you can do it in a meeting room, if you can do it in an office, you also now have to be able to do it on video. I
So if
believe.
I was gonna sum up what you said, you've basically said your message to leaders is stay curious. You've got to get hands-on with these tools yourself, whether that's AI, whether that's social media, whether it's content creation, video, any sort of digital, you've got to get hands-on yourself. You can't outsource it to somebody else, because that authenticity, which I know can be such an overused word, but it really is the reason why those leaders feel so look like they're being held hostage, because they're not comfortable, and that comes through. So if you come through as who you are, then it will be much, much better.
But I go to when we started live streaming together, like I could not drag you onto a live stream, and but now there's a level of comfort, there's a familiarity. You know, it's not as horrible as when you first. I remember the very first one you did. I know exactly how you were thinking and feeling, because you told me, right? And now you can pop up onto this live stream. You arrived into the studio 2 minutes before we went live for various reasons. We won't go into it, right? But like, there's an understanding that was fine. But you can do that and still come and do this, and it's like, I could do that. You would not have been able to do that a year ago. I do
No, I
not
used to
think.
join up. I used to become 15 minutes. I used to have my notes and everything. I mean, I still made notes. I still did my homework, got you some questions.
But the piece of technology that I always refer to in it, just in that regard, just to kind of go back to I think the first point about, you have to be able to bundle all that up with what you've just said to be able to then define your HR and L&D strategy. Because if you don't have all of this awareness and practice, then how are you ever going to create a future-facing HR and L&D strategy if you just don't have awareness of all this stuff? And the point, the piece of technology I'll leave before we get onto article of the week is something called Story Tagger, which I think I've talked about before,
Hmm.
which literally is an app that says record, place your face here and record this 10-second clip and say this, then do a 30-second clip of this. And it's like, no content creator in the world would ever use this app to try and create content to influence culture and behavior. So why do you think this is a shorthand? What you're doing is you're augmenting the laziness and the lack of inertia of, in the nicest possible way, an aging workforce to do the stuff that young people are really good at doing.
That's why
That
you should
app should
also
not.
hire Gen Z.
Absolutely, like absolutely, and this is where I think I talked about it, is like should be able to cross pollinate those generations. What the older generations are really good at doing in person, help Gen Z with, because that's a world that they're not familiar with, and then vice versa with digital. Like the opportunity there is massive, but hierarchies and structures, unless you've got something like reverse mentoring, it's not going to happen.
Challenge to everybody. Right, I am absolutely melting. So we need to move on to article of the week. As Toby pointed out before we started, it was meant to be him coming up with article of the week, but I saw this one on my LinkedIn and just was like, what about this? Can we talk about this? So this is our article of the week. Why your agentic AI program might fail at week or may fail at week 12. Okay, so I want to take a step back here. This is from a guy called, hopefully I'm getting the name right, Ravi Palvi, who does a lot of work with financial institutions in the US implementing agentic AI. And also he's paid for this article in Forbes, but it doesn't stop it being an interesting article. Because basically what Ravi says is that there's always the same pattern of failure. Everything's working fine, as he says. The agent works, the model's within tolerance, the dashboards are green. And somewhere between weeks 8 and 16, hence why they've taken 12, it stops working. And the reason why this is, he calls this to something that happened at, he calls it the 2:47 a.m. failure, based on a time when an autonomous agent approved 1.4 million commercial line of credit, which is a lot of money, whatever currency you're using, without a human intervention. And so basically what happens, I'll go back to the top so you can all see to find it. What happens is that people start trusting AI too much. Is that they are, everything's good, it looks good. We start off really, really keen. We're like, okay, I'm going to review everything. I'm going to review every output. I'm going to look at this. I don't trust it. I don't trust it. And then when the results are consistently good and consistently okay, and you're like, oh, there's nothing to see here, every time you get a little bit less likely to check it with such rigor. Your standard slips slightly. You're still reading it. You're still checking it to the point you're like, actually, this is completely, this system, it works, it's autonomous, it's brilliant, it's fantastic. And then suddenly, oh crap, something's gone wrong, cancel the whole thing. And in this particular, the 2:47 a.m. one, 6 weeks later, the agent was rolled back to a lower autonomy tier, not because of the model was broken, not even because of regulation, but it was to do with operations because the people supervising the agents had stopped looking at the screen. And I thought that was very, very, very pertinent to a lot of what we talk about.
Well, the thing that struck me as you were talking, that I think it's quite similar to health and safety, but bizarrely, in that health and safety training or compliance gets you to a point until a new accident happens that didn't happen before, something that completely new, and then you have to completely revisit your kind of health and safety training and compliance. And so until you got to that point, you would have known about it. So I think it's kind of similar because once we've not had any accidents at work for 100, not us. This is a hypothetical example.
We've not actually had any accidents at work ever currently.
That we've recorded. I don't think we have. And so what you're trying to do there is kind of design the perfect health and safety ecosystem for your business, and invariably it's done. Wash the hands of it. No one's ever going to die or fall off something or whatever, and then it happens, and you go, God, how did we never think of that? And so, if you were going to design an agent, are you going to be able to think of every single permutation that could happen as a result, a la couple of million quid leaving the bank account at 3 o'clock in the morning? I mean, I fail to see how you haven't thought of that one. Do not automatically.
Well, so what it says is that all the criteria were correct. Like they met the correct thing. It was just the amount that then triggered an analyst the next morning to say, "Hey, who's just checking someone's approved this?" Because the model followed exactly what it was meant to do. It's just the amount that was being requested was large.
But surely there'd be a, because even in a on a human element, right? Procurement is a really good example. Any procurement above a certain amount has to go to a third party in that organization to support on that decision making. And
Well,
so
I can't
surely,
tell you the ins and outs because it's coming from
no, no, I'm
an
not expecting you,
article.
but that that you've tried to design something, and for 12 weeks it seems like it's absolutely perfect. You've done your health and safety training for 12 weeks. It seems like it's perfect because no one's died, and then someone dies, and then you're like, oh, our health and safety training didn't work.
Did
And
they have to
so
die? Can they just maybe fall off a ladder and
no,
get injured? Or
they fell down the stairs and
okay,
broke both their ankles. Um, they just fell down the stairs and they got a mild concussion. There we go.
thank you, thank you.
And so, but you're like, oh, okay, so we didn't cover stair training in it. We should build that in. But you're waiting for the point of failure to determine how you update and iterate it, and that's essentially what I believe that article is saying is like once you stop looking and checking, you're just going to start updating it because of failures. And in some instances, the failures can be catastrophic. We talked about one the other week, didn't we? The what company was it where it just deleted everything? I
Oh,
can't
I don't
remember
remember.
now.
Do you know there's been a few? It was the company that manages how you the system behind hiring cars.
Yeah, that's it. And so it just deleted everything. Oh yeah, because like hiring car companies with their clients, right? So it took all their clients offline. And you're like, well, this is just going to happen more and more unless you build human in the loop. And we had a really great question on a training course we were delivering yesterday. Um, because human in the loop is such a woolly phrase that no one's ever worked to define what that actually means on a broader level. You have to be able to define it. What's the thing you say is like you have to understand the process you're going to go through before you try and AIify it.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so with that in mind is when you're designing the process, how do you build human in the loop? Because what I would say is before anything, well, this is probably the nature of AI is like you'd put like a decision like before you do any of these, you have to the transaction has to be validated by a human. But AI will start being able to circumnavigate that and go, I'll just validate it myself because it's easier. That's the issue, I guess.
Wow. Plenty of food for thought there. We all are inherently lazy as humans, and we are all going to take shortcuts. So you are going to have to force yourself to not take shortcuts. We all do it, even if we say we're not. Even I definitely don't review things in the same way that I did before, unless I really make myself do it. So it depends what
Yeah.
it is that comes out, and I know that you don't too, because sometimes I get things and you're like, nope, I haven't even read it. And, great, thanks, Toby.
Which is not useful at all. I recognize
Agreed,
that.
especially when it's like 40 pages.
Oh yeah, but they're going to be the best 40 pages I've ever read. No, I no,
Yeah, but they're really not.
I know. But yeah,
So yeah, plenty.
Sorry,
Sorry,
no, I was going to say, are you going to wrap up or am I?
I was going to wrap up, but you can if you want, because I
No,
can't
no,
remember what's coming
this is
next week.
this was you interviewing me. I'm not here next week, so we're not going to do one
Oh,
next week.
are you not?
You know I'm
Slacker.
not. We talked about this morning. I'll be in the middle of the Northamptonshire
Oh
countryside.
yes. No, I hadn't put two and two together. So everybody, in the absence of Freeformers Unplugged next week, do let us know what you're going to do with your time. But it's been a pleasure having everybody here. Thank you, Toby, for sharing your insights on something that you care a lot about. Thank you for the restraint that you have shown and the fact that we are wrapping it up within 50 minutes. Congratulations. No, thanks everybody. Have a great week. Stay safe if you're in Europe. Don't melt too much. Laugh if you're overseas and you have air conditioning because we are all struggling. The schools are closed. The railways aren't working. But normalcy will be resumed in 2 weeks' time here on Free Farmers Unplugged. But till then, have a great one. Bye.
Catch you later.